Wow. Wow. Hello. How are you doing today? Okay, this is bigger than I envisioned. I've been tricked into being here. So, okay, smart ethics. What is this about? First things first, I don't usually introduce myself, not because I'm especially rude, I might be, but because I don't really believe in appealing to authority. So I really, for what I have to say, usually it doesn't matter who I am. But today, I thought about introducing myself as a disclaimer. So what you need to do, what you need to know is that I have a background in philosophy. I actually majored in philosophy in college. I'm not, I don't have an official education as an engineer. Though I do work as a backend developer at Olaluz right now, mostly doing PHP. I dabble in other languages sometimes. And I love cats. So if you don't know how to approach me at any given time, you have a picture of a cat, you will be talking to me. So basically, this is how I see myself, like a kind of a mismatch of a combination of things. So I've been dabbling in this and that and trying to be what I'm not, apparently. Yeah. So am I not the clearest person in the room? At my office, I've been known to be kind of the master of questions and questioning everything. Also have certain mastery of naming, but we'll get to that later on. So you came here today, and I told you, in the schedule that I was going to talk to you about ethics and what that is. And you might hope that I could give you some kind of highlights and enlighten you, and so that you would get out of here and you would know about ethics, right? It's like, this is what this is about. But no, sorry, what I present to you is more like the big ball of mud of questions, which is actually what ethics is about. So we're going to dive into some concepts, okay? But mostly I'm going to be focused on two main questions. And bear with me on this one, because I'm going to need to introduce a few concepts to you. So the first question that we are going to be answering is the question about the what. Just like that, just what the hell. So of course, since this is a talk about ethics, is what is ethics about? And, is anyone here who doesn't know what ethics is about? Like, no idea whatsoever. Yeah, we're taught about this at school. Everybody knows what ethics is about. Except not. Because there's morality, and then the problems begin. Like, OK, what's the difference? And the thing about naming is that naming is really hard. So I wasn't really around when they decided to do this, but ethics is actually called moral philosophy, because that makes everything clearer, So to give you a bit of context here, the idea is that if you think about it in a way of layered software, ethics would be your model layer, like how do you model your systems? And morality is more like within a specific time frame, within a specific society, how that system is implemented. So morality changes way much more than ethics do. So we are going to be talking about ethics here, because nobody cares about implementation details. So ethics has three main branches, okay, as we studied in philosophy. First one is applied ethics. Applied ethics is the one we may be most familiar with. And this is about exactly what we are supposed to do in a specific situation. Like, picture that we have very limited health resources. How are we going to divide them? How are we going to allocate them? Imagine that, for instance, we would be talking about should the government take care of environmental impact, and really, really specific topics. So the thing about applied ethics is that it's far away from academic discourse, and it's much more interdisciplinary, because if you are going to be talking about health resources, well, you better know a bit about medicine, otherwise what are you talking about? Then there's normative ethics. Normative ethics is concerned about the standards of what we consider right, what we consider wrong. This is what we have been taught at school, actually. Okay, I've lost this, this screen, sorry. And then there's meta-ethics. This is the one it's my favorite, actually. This is about the nature of ethics itself. This is about what is this idea of wrong? What's the concept of it? I really love it, but I will spare you boredom about it. So for the context of this talk, I'm only going to be talking about applied ethics. So yeah, what? That's a what, like, seemed like a silly question, seemed like easy enough. Well, it's not. So the next question I'm going to be talking about is the why, and that's the two main points that we are going to be focusing this talk on. And why? Why have you woken up like at whatever hour you've woken up to be here talking, listening to me at 9 o'clock in the morning? It's really early still. So why did I make you come here? So again, a few concepts here. The idea of autonomy versus heteronomy. So autonomy is the idea that, have you ever been in a conversation where someone tells you, like, well, this is my opinion, this is how I see it. Like, we've all been there, right? That's because we believe that we have this system that I know how I want to behave in this particular situation. And that's the idea of me being able to decide what's OK, what's not so OK to be doing. So heteronomy is basically its opposite. So it's the idea of having someone else, something else, explaining to us what's right, what's wrong. And if you think about it, the problem with autonomous systems is that they give way to every kind of extreme psychopathic ways of seeing things, because if you are the only one who are entitled to decide what's right and what's wrong, then, well, that's my opinion. So that's the problem and the bullshit about it. You can't really discuss it. So that's why we need a kind of heteronomous system to interact with that. And that's what actually school is about, when you have your parents and your teachers explaining to you, no, listen, this is OK and this is wrong. And of course, it doesn't make sense without each other, because what would happen if we didn't have this autonomous kind of way of thinking when you face a situation that your heteronomous system hadn't envisioned? Like, this is a new situation. This is a whole new perspective. I haven't been told how I should act in this particular case. So we need the both of them. And actually, that's the balance between individuality and society. And the heteronomous system we live in today, that's the idea of the law that we have as a society. That's the context and the framework that we are given in order to be able to know what we should be doing at any given time. Though, again, the law is not, it can cover every possible case that will be happening. It's something that covers what has already happened. So that's why we need to be individuals as well. So yeah, SMART. My talk is, the title of my talk is SMART Ethics. I don't know if you've known this acronym for the goal setting. It's a goal setting acronym. I actually didn't know it, so I made it up myself and then discovered that I had sort of copied from someone else. I swear to God I didn't. So this is what mine is about. Mine is about standard behavior, manageability, availability, reliability, and truthfulness. Okay, that's what SMART is about. Don't worry, it's okay. We're going to go through them. So, what do I mean by all these principles? And right now, I'm going to need you to come along with me. Don't worry, I'm not about to go asking you questions. Like, it's nice to see the fear in your eyes, but it's too early for that. So what I need you to do is, most of you will be seated next to somebody you already know. And if you don't, this is a terrible, terrible time to get to know them. But I need you to help me. And the thing is, I am going to go through these 5 points, and I want you to reflect on them. But reflecting on them on our own might be really tough. You know, it's always easier to see how somebody else is messing up. So I want you to help each other reflect on this as I go through it, and think about specific situations in where this might have applied, or you might have actually done something to apply this, but you didn't. So the first one is standard behavior. And since I don't really like to have letters on the screen, I prefer pictures. So that's nicer. Standard behavior. What is this about? It's the idea that software actually should conform to any kind of standard. I will mostly talk about software because that's what I do, but it applies to the software operations, hardware, whatever piece of tech that we are actually building in any particular thing. So the story begins with a postmortem that we had to do with my colleagues at Autonomy. So not so nice. And has anyone here used Laravel's ORM, Eloquent? Like, do you know it? Yeah. Has anyone suffered it? For the most part, it works wonderfully. But Eloquent has a method on its query builder that says first. This particular method. So the idea is that you write a query, you try to interact with your database, and if you're pretty much sure that you only need the first result, like you have ordered your results, or this is a one-on-one relationship, and so you are quite sure that you only need the first one, then, well, you might use it. Seems harmless, right? And instead of giving you a collection, it already returns you the model that you are going to be working with. So that's great. Now, the problem is, we read this documentation, and you know what it says is execute the query and get the first result. Seems harmless enough. So since we had been using, well, this is legacy code, our code base that we already had been working with, and had been working with this method for quite a while, we decided to go with it. What we didn't know, and actually it's nowhere in the documentation, is if you mess up with your query builder, and what you are actually passing to this method is not a query builder, but a model, it actually returns you the first row in your table. Because why not? Who wouldn't want that? So yeah, that wasn't nice. Well, luckily we have a very great rollback in place that saved our assets. But the thing here is we were trusting a standard here. And actually, you might encounter this kind of methods in other ORMs. And we're trusting that what they do is what we all believe they do. So, well, this was our face when we found out that it doesn't. I also love dogs. But the important thing here is standards belong to the community, OK? We can't just go along doing whatever we think we want to do at that particular time. And that's something that I, for one, have been guilty of so many times. When you're building this amazing piece of software that you love, you've been working on this for ages, that might be weeks, and you love it, and you like it, and it's just so beautiful, except nobody else understands it. So no, people, we can't do that. We actually need to build technology that people can relate to, that people can actually use. And the standards, we cannot decide on our own. The standards belong to a community. And that's not just the community of us, DevOps, developers, sysadmins, whatever. though it is to a point, but it's a whole community of people making use of this technology. And actually, it's pretty much why you would see that every other mobile app has the same icons, and if you get to interact with one which doesn't, you'd probably want to kill the developers. So, manageability. Again, I don't like words. I prefer photos. So, manageability is about, it's the next step after standard behavior, and it's how can we actually interact with this piece of tech? How easy it is for us to interact and make use of this piece of technology. And at this point, we can actually stretch the standards a bit and maybe bind the rules as far as we are able to make it actually easier to use. Of course, that's, again, it's really easy that we fall into this trap of believing that this is easier to use. I'm actually one of those people, you know the trackpads that you can set in different directions? I'm the one that has it like counterintuitive way. Everyone hates my laptop. But they believed at some point that that was actually more manageable, and that's why we are allowed to do that. We are allowed to try new things, and actually we are encouraged to try new things, but we have to keep in mind that this has to be manageable. And imagine that we are building a piece of hardware that most of the times we don't think of, but for instance, when we design the hardware for a mobile phone, who do we have in mind when we decide how big it's going to be? Like most of the phones at first, I couldn't actually interact with them because my hands are smaller. So do we think about that? Do we think about how easier it's going to be for people to actually interact with this? Do we think about, for instance, when we are designing a website and we are lucky enough to have an amazing UX designer at our team that actually helps us make our websites accessible so that blind people can actually interact with them, and that's one way in which our software is manageable. And actually, one thing we do, and at least I've seen that we consistently do, is that we like to create layered architecture software, at least within our teams, and I hope you do, because that thing's really amazing. And since I don't like pictures of code because everything is JavaScript, I decided to go with pictures of a library, because I like this idea of being able to find the code that we want to modify, that we need to interact with in order to do whatever task we've been assigned. And that's one way of manageability that we are faced with every single day. So whenever you are going to write new code, again, we are also people, and we are also subject to this idea of manageability. Let's just help ourselves. The thing with code is you can actually do TDD, which helps a lot with keeping in mind that someone else might need to read these. But when we are designing pieces of tech that is going to go for the end user, well, being aware of the kind of people that you have in mind when designing this, you can't really TDD for that. You actually need to have a diverse team to help you understand the different needs that the people that's going to interact with this might have. So next one, availability. This might be the one that resonates the most with the people that are here today, you know. We've been talking about this. I believe a couple of people talked about this yesterday. Our commuter trains are known for their lack of availability many, many times. And actually, it's the idea that you have to be able to access the service. So I've presented this acronym before, and I've kind of iterated this idea a bit. So first of all, you need to have the ability to access the service. That includes, of course, scaling up, scaling down, and all the nice things that we talk about when we talk about DevOps. This is the one that we are most familiar with. But it's not just that. And I was talking about manageability, talking about blind people. So that's, again, availability. So when you design your websites, do you think about colorblind people? Like, for instance, do you know those pop-ups that used to be like with a red button for cancel this and a green button for accept this? And everybody knows that green's OK and red is bad. You know, red's bad, like, don't do that. Except color blindness, one of the most frequent ones, you can't tell apart red from green. So yeah, maybe not the best idea. And again, that's availability. If you can't really access, if you can't really make use of that service, it's not available to you. And it doesn't matter that your servers are up and running if you can't actually get the service that you need to get from them. By the way, Paul says here, you know, the blank screens is for you to actually interact with each other and talk about what I'm telling you. I'm seeing you, you're not talking. Think, people, please think. I know you've been given coffee, so please think. Reliability. So we're near the end, don't worry. We're almost there. So reliability is about how failure tolerant are your systems, right? Again, pictures, love them best. Imagine that you are trying to register, trying to maybe buy something, and the systems go down. Well, first of all, they shouldn't. But if they do, how reliable are they? And one really crucial point here is how reliable a feedback do we give? Because if I try to buy something and it fails, but it specifically tells me that, hey, your purchase couldn't be processed, but it's OK. We didn't make any kind of charge on your bank account, and here you can start again. Sorry, something went wrong. But that's OK. I mean, I'll probably forgive the first time that that happens. But again, it depends on how good a feedback we are giving. And that actually happens to us a lot when you have to go through endless logs, and you end up blaming everyone for not logging what they should be logging, because you actually don't know what's going on. Again, this is not just about end users. We, as developers, we suffer these too. And the first step into this idea is to give like real, honest, and real good feedback. And that's the first step into trust of any kind of system. Of course, a different dimension to the reliability idea is right now we give tons and tons of information. We just give it up like everywhere to every system in the world. And we need to be able to ensure that that data is secure. You know, that's one part of reliability, that our systems are not going to be compromised, because that's some serious problems that could arise from here. But again, we are treating like with really sensitive information, and we need to ensure this. And the last one, it's truthfulness. Again, these are all linked between each other. Again, you can't really think of them without the other. And truthfulness is the ultimate step into trust. Because if you think about it, most of what happens behind closed doors. It happens under the hood. And it's not just about, oftentimes we think about end users like short of morons, like they don't know how to interact with what we do. But if you think about it, we use frameworks, we use all kinds of tools. And only yesterday, we were talked about what we can get from Google machine learning interfaces. And we don't know what's going on behind that, behind those closed doors. Most of the time, we can't actually get into knowing every little thing that goes on. So we need to trust. And the first step into trust is we need to ensure everyone that we are true to what we say we are doing. And actually, every business I've known makes money out of collecting data and connecting it in some way. In some way. And I'm not only talking about social networks, but for instance, for us, I work at an electricity company, and for us, it's really important to know what we predict that it's going to be your electricity consumption for the next hour, for the next week, for whatever. So we have to do a lot of things. We have to interact with the data that we collect. And again, here it's really important that we don't go out of our way into how we use this data, because we are going to have it, and we are going to be really, really free to use it in whatever way we want to. But what we do with it, it's going to define who we are as professionals and what our company is like, and it is going to define if we are true to the users or to the people we are serving or not. So again, lots of questions, right? Like, I've made you think a bit. I haven't given you so many answers. Sorry for that. I don't really have the answers. I'm just here to present you with new questions, with a new problem that you didn't know you had, but you did. So why? Why have you stuck with me? Like, why do you want to be here? Why do you keep listening to me? Because there's no other track, but other than that, why are you listening to me? So here, to this particular question, I did want to give you a few answers. And there are tons of different answers. That's the thing with philosophy. We've been answering things for 25 centuries, and we are still no closer to get to an agreement. But I wanted to give you 3 very specific answers to the why it'd be nice to actually use this framework, this smart framework that I came up with to give you these sort of principles to guide you. And the first one is money. So everybody wants to make money. And the thing is, if you actually keep in mind that you are working for people and keep in mind what you're doing and how you are going to work for inclusion, that means that your company would have a greater reach. And greater reach means greater profit. It's just as simple as that. So if anything, at least do it for the money. So second one is a really, really selfish point of view. Remember that I told you about this idea of autonomy and heteronomy, this idea of how the law conforms our heteronomous system right now. So the thing is, what we are doing right now, we are doing applied ethics, and we are the ones that know about the technology we are building, because we are building it. It doesn't exist until we build it. So it hasn't been there are no rules for it yet. Right now, we are starting to see the first times where we are being held accountable for what we do. But we still don't have an external framework for this. The thing is, the law, the frameworks, the heteronomous systems don't come out of the blue. They are created after someone, and many, many someones had this kind of same idea. They are created after many people in autonomous ways come to the conclusion that this was okay or this was wrong. And the problem is, since we are being individuals here, every one of us might have slightly, or not so slightly, different perspective on what we are allowed to do. But in some time from now, this will be common ground, and might be the common ground that is not what you thought was going to be. So you better have a pretty damn good reason when you get there to give as to why you did what you did. So this is a really, really selfish point of view, but again, quite an important one. If you did what right now is considered wrong, you better have a good reason for that. And then from an ethical point of view, which I truly hope that I can convey to you. So ethics at its core is born from the, well, in not a small amount, from the idea of empathy, of empathizing with other people. But empathizing with other people is really hard. We might not like them. So why would we want to empathize with them? Well, here's the thing. There's one thing that I have seen that we consistently do, and that's empathizing with ourselves. Most specifically with our future selves. You know, when you're writing code and you know, there's a really easy way to do that, and something in your mind tells you, you're going to go back to this code 6 months from now, and you're going to hate yourself for this. So let's start from there. Let's start empathizing with ourselves, with our future selves. Because the thing is, we are building the future. We're actually building the present, but we are going to be building the future. We're shaping the way technology is going to look a few months from now, a few years from now. So is it something, is it a world where we want to live? Think about it from our own perspective, from our own point of view, because we are going to be the ones living in that place. So that's actually it for me. Okay. Few notes here that I want, a couple of remarks that I want to do. You might not have noticed, but I've been consistently talking about people. That's important, because we have a tendency to talk about users. Users are something that we don't need to think much about. But people have specific needs. And when I've given these SMART principles as a way of giving you kind of a way to starting point into thinking about these things. And when you think about these things, I know we've been talking about blameless culture, about not being so personal about things, but when you think about the needs of people, do personalize. It's important, because we have very widely different needs, every one of us. So personalize. Make sure that you have different points of view when you are going to think about this. And think about this, not just like, you know, when you have to stop and go for a code review because, you know, code reviews are important and we have to do this and it's kind of a chore that we have to do. No, we have to think about this when we are writing code, when we are designing things. So this is just at least to get you started. And from this point, I really hope that this starts to come naturally to everybody. And that's it. That's the end of the show.
Questions?
Are you still too asleep to have questions? I tried my best to make it light. Seriously, this could have been way worse.
Come on, guys, don't be shy.
Again, if you want to talk to me afterwards, you better have a picture of a cat. OK, so that was your chance.
Right, thank you, Paula.